Okay, everybody ready? Ready, ready, ready? Ready, ready, ready? Okay. Come on in, come on in. Okay, so good morning, people. Welcome to Thursday, which is almost Friday. Although, I don't know, how are you feeling this morning? Aliana, no. Anna, okay. Feeling okay? Sometimes, maybe it's a little too early in the term, but sometimes I feel like Thursday is like everyone's low day because they've been in school for 4 days, but it's still not Friday. So the energy is kind of on Thursday is low, and then it kind of picks up on Friday as everyone gets ready for the weekend. I don't know if anyone's feeling that. Maybe, again, maybe it's too early in the term for that, but I guess we'll see. So Amy is here. Good morning, Amy. And Vicky is here. Good morning to you, Vicky. So what we'll do today is we'll talk a little bit more about the socialization stuff that we were talking about yesterday. And yeah, we'll talk a little bit about the socialization stuff. Then I have a little exercise to do with you that I'm curious to see how it will go, but we'll do that. I'm always interested to see what you think. But let's jump in. Nope, that's not right. Why is it not right? It's not right because okay, hang on. Bear with me for 1 second here, people. I'm just going to fix my slides and I'll be back to you in 2 seconds. Because I need to, all right, because I didn't finish that from yesterday. No problem, no problem. The way this software works, my slideshow actually has to be a PDF, and I didn't PDF it yesterday, so there wasn't a PDF in my software, but now there's going to be. Okay. There. Okay. Sorry about that. All fixed. Oh, and Sam's here too. Good morning, Sam. I'm going to put you down there, Sam. All right. So yesterday we were talking about what socialization was, and I said it was very important for this course and, of course, very important for life as well, because it is the systematic training of the norms of our culture. And so we all kind of, at this point, almost instinctively know how to behave in many different situations, but we didn't always know how to do that, right? The way we behave is not natural. The way we behave is taught to us, right? We are socialized in order to be able to interact with other people and in a way that allows them to trust us at least a little bit, right? At least enough so that we can cooperate as human beings, right? And again, we said that's because when little babies are born, they have very little in terms of programming. They don't know how to do anything at all, right? They don't know how to talk or eat or walk or any of that stuff, and we have to teach them all of it. Yesterday we read a little section of the textbook, and again I said I'm not sure how much we'll use the textbook, maybe a little bit, maybe not very much at all. I'll see. I didn't manage to use it last term very much, but we'll see if I can work it into this term a little more, if it makes sense. But we talked about the difference between values and beliefs. And values are the things that cultures deem to be right and wrong and good and bad. Beliefs are the things that people in a culture believe to be true. And we'll talk about some of those beliefs a little bit later in terms of ideologies. But yeah, we just wanted to make a distinction between values and beliefs, and also social norms. We'll talk about in a second. But we also said that once people start to start to be socialized, start to be instructed in the types of norms and values and beliefs they should have, we kind of continually try to encourage people to follow them, right? And so we have all kinds of little methods of rewarding people who follow social rules and kind of punishing people who don't. And again, what's very interesting is that we all kind of do this, right? This isn't social institutions that do this, which we'll talk about today. This isn't just parents or just teachers. We all do it, right? When people don't follow social rules, we tend to act in a way to try to get them to follow the rule again. And it's very interesting that we do this. So we values, beliefs, and social norms. These are kind of modes of behavior, the way we're supposed to act. And so yesterday, if you remember, we watched a few Seinfeld clips, and the reason we watched those was, to enjoy them and laugh at them because I think they're kind of funny, but also to highlight socialization and violating social norms, because again, Seinfeld is very good at doing that for laughs, finding a social norm, getting someone to break it, and then having the other characters react to it. And so we saw a few clips, right? We saw this clip with the woman in the black and white dress, and of course the social norm was that she seemed to be wearing the same dress all the time, right? And so was it just one dress that she owned? Did she own, a bunch of copies of the same dress? Jerry was dating her, and he was freaking out a little bit about what was going on. But of course, that's a social norm that we have in our society, right? You're supposed to wear different clothes every day. You're not supposed to wear exactly the same thing. We saw this one with the Snickers bar and the fork and knife. Of course, the normal, quote, normal way to eat a candy bar is just with your hands, right? You peel the wrapper down and you eat it. But we saw not only people violating that social norm, and of course when they did, people kind of like, what are you doing, right? People were looking and asking questions, but then strangely enough, that broken social norm almost started to create a new social norm, and people started to copy it, right? And sometimes that happens as well, right? Sometimes norms get broken, social norms get broken, and people are kind of punished and encouraged to follow the norm again. But then sometimes that norm can change, or a new norm can be created where people will continue to copy it. And again, celebrities are really good for doing this kind of thing, right? Because people like to respect and emulate and copy celebrities. There's lots of influencers out there nowadays. And basically that's what an influencer is, right? They're almost creating new social norms, or getting people to sort of imitate them and do what they do, right? We saw this one, look at the look on his face. This was the one with the hand washing, right? So we saw the owner and the chef of this restaurant did not wash his hands after going to the bathroom, and then proceeded to make pizza for Jerry here and the chef's daughter. And so, of course, this is a cultural norm about cleanliness, right? And how you keep clean. And so we have a social norm that after you go to the bathroom, especially if you're coming out of the stall, you would wash your hands, right? And yet the cook doesn't do it, and Jerry has a reaction, right? Remember, he shakes his head and can't even speak. And then the last one was the double dipping of the chip, right? And so the idea here is that you after the chip has touched your mouth, you may not dip it again. Unless it's your private bowl of dip, then you can do whatever you want. But if you're sharing with other people, the idea is don't do that, right? So we see George violate the social norm, right? We see him double dip the chip, and then we see the other guy at the party, Timmy, have a very strong reaction to that, and he tries to get George to follow the rule. Of course, George says no, and they have a little fight about it. But social norms get violated, and people try to encourage others to follow them again, right? So one of the important parts about socialization and social norms and beliefs and values is that they become internalized, okay? And so we're taught these things, but then we're taught them over and over again, and we see them over and over again. And people reinforce those things with us. And so if we don't follow social rules, people may sort of punish us. And if we do follow social rules, they will reward us. And again, we kind of do all of these things instinctively without even really thinking about it. And so after a while, we start to internalize these kind of ways of thinking and ways of acting, and we kind of just think that they're natural, right? We think they're sort of instinctive and they're just kind of the way the world is, and we kind of lose sight of the fact that they are just taught to us, right? They're just they're socially constructed rules. And again, there's no reason why you should eat a Snickers bar with your hands, or with a fork and knife, or with chopsticks, or in any way. There's no natural way to do that. It's just the way that certain societies have chosen to do things, right? And they make a rule, and then people start to follow it. And I want to take that idea a step further and say that it's important for us to understand that it's not just social norms, but the values and beliefs become internalized too. And sometimes we forget that those are taught to us as well, and they're not entirely natural. And so the way that we look at the world, the way we see it, the judgments we make about the world and other people and other people's behavior, because we all judge other people's behavior a little bit, don't we? Yeah, we kind of do. But all of those have to do with our socialization. And so we're all kind of looking at the world through a lens of our culture, a lens of our socialization. And so that really influences and patterns what we see. And that connects back to that idea of positionality, the idea that because we're all a group of diverse people of different genders, different ages, we have different ethnicities, we were raised in different cultures, we might be different religions. We're all going to be looking at society through a slightly different set of lenses, right? And so all of you are going to perceive this class and this college and Canada and Vancouver. You're all going to perceive this differently than I do, right? Because again, we're looking through slightly different lenses, right? Okay. So I have mentioned already that we're all socialized. It's basically a lifelong process. It's happened to all of us, and it is still happening to all of us. And we don't really get a choice in socialization, right? It just something that happens. And so let's do a little activity and just see what happens out of this, okay? So I'm going to show you a picture here, okay, or a series of pictures. And sorry, I'm just gonna post these in. There we go. I'm just gonna post these in Microsoft. Jeez, I'm just gonna post these in Microsoft Teams so that the online people are sure to be able to see it. Okay, so just 1 second. So I'm going to ask you a few questions about the pictures I'm going to show you. And so I'll ask you questions like, who is the smartest? Okay? Who's the wealthiest? Who's the most religious? Who reads a lot? Who do you think reads a lot? Who's careful with money? Who is a stay-at-home parent? Who's most likely to feel included in society? Who's most likely to feel isolated? Who's the most likely to be put in charge or to be made a boss of something? And who's the most likely to travel freely anywhere in the world? Okay, so that's what I'm going to ask you. So, how should I do this? Let's just go through one by one, okay? So, I'm going to give you the pictures here. The little guy in the circle in the bottom corner is not part of this, so just ignore him. Okay. So I'll have you look at these images for just a couple minutes, and then I'll start asking you questions about them, okay? Again, the little guy in the circle is not part of this experiment. Okay, that is good. Sorry about that. So first question for you, and online people, you can chime in with this as well. My first question is this: who's the smartest person here? Who's the smartest person here? 14. Okay. So why do you say 14?
Like he look, like he look intellect, like he do like this, so like he just like he's grabbing his tie like a businessman.
Okay. So something about his body language communicates that, right? He's communicating his intelligence somehow through his body language. What else? Who's the smartest person here?
Number one.
Number one?
Yep.
Okay. Why do you say that?
He look like polite and well educated.
Okay, she looks polite and well educated. What makes her look well educated? Not sure?
Yeah.
It's okay.
That's her face.
Daniel says one as well. The look on her face, her facial expression. Okay. Both Vicky and Kenan say, and Amy say 7. Anyone else say 7?
Yes.
Okay. Why do you say 7? Why is she the most intelligent person? Why is she the smartest person? Amy says there's something confident about the way she looks. What do you think? 7? What makes you think she's the smartest one? There's a certain amount of confidence in her expression. Okay. Yeah, Vicky kind of says the same thing. I guess something about her smile seems to indicate to us that she's an intelligent person. That's interesting. Anyone else? So we've got 14 and 1 and 7. And anyone else think a smartest person?
We can't really tell. I mean, just by the appearance.
I know. I know, but stick with me on this. Stick with me on this. Don't think too hard about it. Just give me your reactions, okay?
Number one looks like something you would put on a university website. Like a picture. It's like going on campus, our student life.
Okay, so yeah, so person number 1 looks like someone who might be in a university calendar or catalog, right? As an intelligent, sophisticated young woman.
Take a photo shoot.
She looks like she's doing a photo shoot. Yes, it's definitely, well, I guess almost all of these are kind of reasonable portraits, right? Except maybe number 8. Number 8 looks a little less, like the photo looks less professional, right? But everyone else looks like a pretty good photo of them, right?
Number 11.
Huh?
Number 11.
In terms of intelligence?
No, doesn't look like.
Oh, I don't know, maybe. That's a good portrait of that kid. He looks pretty cute. Okay, how about this one? Who would you say is the wealthiest person here? 14. Okay, so there's a chorus of 14s. Why do you say that?
Because the average people almost they are really rich.
Okay, so yeah, so this guy looks like he's from an Arabian country somewhere. Arabian countries tend to have lots of oil and tend to have lots of money, and therefore we assume that he's the wealthiest one, right?
Or maybe number 6.
Or maybe number 6. Okay. Why do you say that?
He's old, you know, he's probably, he had a job and now he's retired and he got some money.
Okay, so number 6 is an old guy, and so he's had many, many years to make lots of money. Hopefully he didn't spend it all, and maybe he's quite wealthy at this point, right? Sure.
Can't really tell who's the wealthiest, I'm just guessing.
No, and that's the whole point of this. You can't tell.
Do you have
Um,
the answer?
so Daniel says, what's that?
Do you have like the answer?
I do not. So Daniel says 14 as well, as does Vicky. Amy and Cannon say number 2 for the wealthiest person. You might have to explain that in terms of who's the wealthiest person. So Amy and Cannon, you can say why you think so. So we've got 14 and 6. Anyone else? 4 and 13. Okay, so 4. Why do you say 4?
I say 4 because she can be a model because of her skin.
Right. So number 4 might be she actually is is that Winnie Harlow? No, that's
No, her name.
what is her name? Yeah, so she actually is a model, and we have the idea that models make lots of money, so she might be the wealthiest, right? And what was the other one? 13? 13? Why 13?
She gives us the vibe,
The vibe? What kind of vibe?
the rich vibe.
The rich vibe? Define
It
the
looks like really a man.
define the rich vibe for me.
I don't know. You have a rich vibe, you know.
Do I have the rich vibe?
You do.
it's just a vibe, I promise you. It's not based on anything. Sorry. Okay, so Amy said not number 2. Oh, sorry, you're right, Amy. Not number 2. Right. Definitely not. Although maybe, you never know. Okay, so we've got a few people here. 14 kind of looks like he's from an Arab country, and we have an impression of Arab countries being pretty wealthy. We have 6 because he's old and maybe he's had a lot of time to make money. Number 4 because she's a model and maybe models make a lot of money. 13 seems to have a rich vibe going on, whatever that kind of means. Let me ask you this: who's the most religious here?
12. 12.
The most religious is 9 or 12. Okay, let's look at 9. I'm just going to clear out my little thing here. So, why is 9 the most religious? She's what?
She just
She just looks
looks religious.
religious. Okay. Can anyone else help out with 9? What makes you think she's a religious person?
She has color in her hand, and that may be a sign of religious act or something.
Oh, okay. So her hand is stained this kind of greenish blue, and so maybe she's in the process of doing some kind of ritual, maybe? Okay. Let me just see. I think Amy, that was from the last one. So that was 9. Does anyone else? Okay, Daniel thinks 9 as well. Anyone else think 9? And Daniel, why do you think 9? Okay. Who else? Who else is the most religious? 12? Why is she the most religious person here?
She has all the painting and the jewelry, like just like she belonged to a tribe or something.
She's doing a tribal thing.
Okay. So I'm going to press pause on that for a second. So Daniel says that maybe she's wearing church clothes, number 9, and so maybe she's dressed up. Maybe she's dressed up for that. Right. So number 12. So her clothing is very ornate, right? She's got lots of beads, and her face is painted, and she looks like she's very dressed up, right? What's that? Yeah. Yeah. Hold on to that for a second. So 12 could be religious, right? Do we know that anything that she's wearing is necessarily religious? No. But right. So, okay. So, and that's maybe I'll point that out too. Is that sometimes this is a question of sort of social meaning. And so sometimes, and this happens in anthropology a lot, when we don't understand the meaning behind something, sometimes we just assume it's religious. Like we want to assume it's religious, but it may not, that may not be the case at all. So she might be, her manner of dress and her face painting might be for a religious occasion, and they might have religious significance, or it might just be how you dress in her culture, or maybe it's just a party, right? Maybe that's how you dress when you're going to Coachella or a party, right? So we don't really know, but sometimes it's tempting to, if you don't understand what's going on, to assume that it is a religious thing. And anthropologists do this all the time, or used to anyway. Somebody said 14 for most religious. Why is that?
Because I don't know, his outfit also looks.
It's his outfit.
Yeah, it's all his outfit.
It's his what?
Clothing. It's his clothing.
His clothing? Okay, and so that speaks to you as a religious person?
Yeah.
Okay.
I wouldn't say religious. I don't know, but it's just.
No, of course you don't know, but that's okay. That's part of the exercise here. So the most religious. So Amy says 12. Daniel said 9, or maybe 1. Because that's what his mom wears to church. Okay, that's fair. Let's see now. Let's try this one. Who reads a lot?
3.
Who's a reader here? 3 reads a lot?
Yeah.
Why 3 or 7? Why 3?
Because kids read a lot of books.
Because what?
Kids like to read kids' books.
Right. Kids like to read, and they're encouraged to read by their parents and by their teachers. So she might read a lot.
Number 7.
7. Why does 7 read a lot?
Like she looked optimistic. It seemed like she read a lot of self-help books. So
Okay.
like she become more happy.
Right. She's reading lots of Chicken Soup for the Soul and all kinds of other books.
Maybe number 10. I mean 6.
Okay, so maybe 7. What else do we have? Number 10? Or number 6? Why 10 or 6? Which one did you think? Number 6? Why you say so?
I don't know. I think like old people read books more than young people. That's why.
Sure. Maybe he's an old guy. Maybe he's retired. He's got lots of time on his hands. Maybe he reads a lot, right? Us young people are kind of busy sometimes, and we don't have time to read. But maybe he's got lots of spare time. Who else might read a lot here?
Number 1.
Number 1. Why do you say 1?
But she still looks like a university or a college student. That would be good.
Right. So there's something that seems to be suggesting her intelligence or her university student or graduate feeling from her, right? And so maybe it's her age, right? She looks like she might be a young adult, maybe a university student or recent graduate. She's dressed kind of stylishly, I guess, even though we can't really see entirely what she's wearing. Something's going on with her. Hang on one sec here. Whoops. Where's my cursor? Oh, it's here. Let me just see. Who reads a lot? Okay, so Vicky said 6 as well for reading a lot. Daniel says 7, which we said. Vicky says, yeah, because he is old, and I guess old people read a lot. Yeah, 6 is there. Charlene is here, one of my former students. So, hi, Charlene. Amy says 8 because he looks like a student. Okay, so he's a young guy.
He also has a logo for his school.
He also has a what?
Logo.
He has a logo. Yeah, he has it's a little Ferrari logo, I think. Yeah. All right, so he might be a student, and students are supposed to read a lot anyway. Yeah, Dennis is the guy in the circle at the bottom right. He doesn't. That guy doesn't read as much as he should or as much as he wants to because he's usually reading stuff that he has to read. He's partway through. I'm partway through a really good book called I think it's called All the Light We Cannot See. Has anyone read that one? It's so beautifully written, and I got partway through it on the summer break, and I've really got to get back to it and finish it. But yeah, the guy in the circle doesn't read as much as he might want to. Sam says 7 and 6 are the readers, and Canon says 7 as well. Okay. And number 5, Avera, why do you say 5?
I don't know, he looks like a hipster, like university student who would read at a cafe on Sundays.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. So he looks like a person who would do a certain thing, right? He looks like a hipster who would, sit in a coffee shop on a Sunday and, drink an Americano or a latte and read a book, and he probably uses a typewriter too for some reason. And yeah, we kind of have an impression of what he might be like, even though we don't know, right? What about this one here? Who's careful with money here?
6. I would score D.
6.
6 is careful with money?
Yeah.
Why?
The older you get, the more careful you become.
Old people are cheap is what I'm hearing, right? Old people don't like to spend money, or old people think everything is too expensive, right? Because back in their day, they used to be able to get a chocolate bar for $0.25, and now they're $1.25. Ugh. So, yeah, we have this impression that old people are cheap, right? Who else is careful with money here? Number 9. I'm just going to move my little question out of the way here. Why is she careful with money?
Also old.
Also old? Okay. So again, old people maybe are careful with money. And old people are retired, right? They may not work anymore, and so they have to be maybe a little more careful with their money, right? Amy says 2. Why do you say 2, Amy? Did anyone else suggest 2? What's that? Probably doesn't have any money. So any money that he might have, he's probably careful with, right? Well, and that's the other thing, is that maybe he's not careful with his money, right? Maybe that's why he's there in the first place. I don't know. Let's see. So Daniel says 6. Vicky also says 2. Because he needs money, right? And so maybe any money he gets his hands on, he will be very careful with because he doesn't have that much, right? That's reasonable. For food. Let me just see. Sorry about that. Money is important for number 2, especially because he doesn't seem to have very much, right? Who's most likely the stay-at-home parent? 3? 3? No, not the parent. Who's a parent? She's way too young. Sorry? 6? Nah, his children are grown and out of the house. He doesn't count. 9 and 6? Let's see. Okay, so why?
Only the 2 of them are parents. The
What?
rest are too young.
Okay, so some people are definitely too young to be parents here, right? So number 3 for sure, number 10 and 11, they're kids, right? But who's staying at home looking after the kids here? 6? I think he's probably too old.
9. 6 and 9.
9? I think she might be too old as well. I think her kids are grown, his kids are grown. Their kids probably have kids of their own. They're grandparents, I bet.
But the rest are too young.
Yeah, the rest are too young.
The rest are too young. Okay.
They may have it by accident.
Sometimes that happens, right? Number 4. Okay, so she could be a stay-at-home parent, right? Vicky says 13 as a stay-at-home parent. I forget what it says on his arm. It says something like, my heart is in Syria or something. I think that's what's written there.
I think it does say that.
Is that what it looks like? I know it's probably pretty small from there, but,
Yeah.
and that 13 is in the way. So 6 or 9, it came up. I think they're probably a little old, but it's up to you. Maybe 7, right? She could be a young parent. It's hard to know how old she is, but okay. Here we go. That one's a tricky one, but let's see what happens with this one. Who's most likely to feel included in society? Who's most likely to feel like they're a part?
1, 4, 7,
13.
1, 4, 7? Okay, just let's start with just one of those.
13.
Mostly everyone.
Mostly everyone. Who do you think is most likely to feel included? 6? 4?
7 and 1.
6, 4, 7, 1, 13, 14. What's influencing your choices here?
And 15.
And 15.
The guy
The-
number 13.
The guy
like, he has the
He has his days. But what? So, if you just had to pick one, if you had to pick just one person who feels most included in society, who would you pick? What?
13.
Okay, so Kang, why 13?
Like he has the tattoo, he's muscular, he got all the beard, so he's like the cool kid.
Ah, okay. So here we have a guy he looks handsome, he looks muscular, he's got the tattoo or something, so he's saying how much he loves his country. I'm guessing by the background he's actually still in that country, but I don't know for sure. So maybe he feels part of society because he loves his country, he's actually in his country, and he's a pretty handsome guy, right? Pretty handsome guy? 7 or 8 out of 10, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to comment on him.
9.
Oh, he's a 9 out of 10? He is a pretty good looking guy, I'll give him that. Okay, give me another one. Most included. 6? Why 6? Because he's a white male. Okay, so yeah, we know that if he's in North America, for instance, that white people and men tend to have power in society, right? He's not going to be discriminated against because of his gender. He's not going to be discriminated against because of his race. He might be discriminated against because of his age a little bit, maybe. But yeah, he's a white male, right? Who else? Maybe just one more. 4? Okay. Daniel, I'm just going to include these. Also 5. And Vicky's got a few here, 1, 7, and 14. 4, why 4?
Because she's a model, and I think they are like, if she goes out, everyone will be around her and
Yeah.
around her or something.
Yeah, so she's a model, and what do we generally think of models?
They have a lot of followers.
Yeah, they have a lot of followers. They're cool, they're beautiful, they're kind of celebrities. So she's probably going to feel very accepted, right? Should we talk about 5? Daniel says 5. Does anyone want to agree with Daniel? Maybe? Another white guy, right? Also, I don't know, physical attractiveness scale. Is this a hot guy? Yeah, reasonably hot guy, right? And so he's probably going to feel included as well, right? Girls are going to be checking him out all the time, or maybe guys. Okay. Who, opposite side of this question, who's most likely to feel isolated? Okay, so why? I'm definitely hearing 8. Why 8?
Look at him, look at his face.
Also 2.
Also 2. Let's work with 8. Why 8?
He looks like I'm not being mean. He just looks like a nerd who's like.
Okay, he looks kind of nerdy. He looks a little awkward. What else about him?
Looks
His
depressed.
posture.
His posture? What's his posture like?
He has like an awkward photo posture.
He's kind of hunched over, and the look. What's the look on his face communicating to people?
Like
Get, go away.
Go away.
Go away.
I'm not happy.
Like, what's going on here?
He doesn't know what's going on. He's kind of
Bored.
he's bored or unhappy or
Depressed.
depressed, maybe a little bit. He's kind of hunched over. He looks a little nerdy, maybe. So, yeah, right? Because all of those things tend to not be valued or accepted by society, right? So he's, generally in society, we like people who are, well, at least in this society here, we generally like people who are confident and happy and outgoing and cool, whatever that means exactly. And person number 8 here seems to be the opposite of all those things, right? He seems to be not that cool, not that confident, not that happy, kind of hunched over. And so, yeah, he might feel isolated. And we're not saying he deserves to feel that way, of course, but he might, right? Some people said 2 as well. Why do you say 2?
because
They're alone in the streets and
Looks like a loner.
Yeah, he might be alone in the streets, right? He he definitely has no place to live, because I think if you did have a place to live, you wouldn't sleep on a street corner, right? So he has no place to live. He may not have any family or friends.
or no one accepted him.
He might not be accepted. People probably walk by him all day long and ignore him. So I think it would be pretty easy for him to feel isolated, right?
Then probably also number 10.
Number 10, Vicky says 10 as well. Why do you say 10?
The look on his eyes.
Okay, he looks like, yeah.
Because
he gets
of the
bullied when
color
he's,
of
like, in school.
his hair and the wrinkles, maybe he will feel that everyone else will make kind of fun of him.
Number 10?
Yeah.
I think he's just got freckles.
Yeah, because of that.
Yeah. So he's got red hair and freckles, and depending where he comes from, maybe he'll get teased about that. We don't know. He doesn't look like he's having the best day, right? He's kind of like, yeah, it's a pandemic. What are you gonna do, right? He looks a little, he looks a little meh, right? So maybe. Vicky says, Vicky says he's not smiling, right? So maybe he's most likely to be isolated because he's not smiling, or maybe he's not smiling because he's isolated, right? Yeah, and Daniel says the same thing with. Daniel also picked number 8. Seems like he might be a little introverted, right? Maybe not a outgoing kind of person. 4. Anyone say 4 as not included? No? Maybe? Yeah, her facial expression is not super happy, right? There might have been times where she might have been teased for her skin condition, right? She has a condition, I forget what it's called, but there's kind of differential pigment in her skin. I think it does start with a V, vitiligo or something like that. Yeah, so she's got different amounts of pigments in different parts of her skin, and that's why she's kind of different colors. She may have been teased about that in the past. Of course, it's part of her look as a model now, so maybe she's okay with it. But in the past, she might have felt isolated. That's possible.
14.
Yeah, and Amy says for that one, she's looking kind of cold. She's looking like she's not happy, although sometimes models are supposed to look that way, right? They're supposed to look very standoffish. But it's tough to know, right? It's tough to know if she's expressing her feelings or if she's just posing at that point. What about this one here? Who's most likely to be put in charge? 14? Okay, why 14? He looks confident. He definitely does.
Number 6.
He looks like he's living his best life. Hold on number 6. Anyone else want to talk about 14? What's that?
Oh no, I was just talking about number 12.
Okay. Okay, so maybe 14. He looks confident and yeah. Okay. Who else? Do we have a 6, or do we have something else?
6 maybe because he's old and he knows that.
Okay, he's old. Sometimes we put old people in charge, especially of the United States. Apparently, you have to be like in your 70s to be president. Don't get me started. Daniel says 13. If we have somebody else said 13, right?
Oh, I said 12.
You said 12? Did anyone say 13? Okay, Daniel, you're on your own on this one. But you can tell us why if you want. 12, why 12?
I don't know. She looks like a leader.
Me?
Like a clan leader.
Could be, right? Often people who are in charge often we use symbols, we use visual symbols to communicate that they're in charge, right? And so, if you're in the military, maybe you have insignias on your shoulder. If you're a king, you might have a crown. If you're a captain of a team, you might have the little C on your jersey. We usually symbolically communicate authority or status to people in different ways. And so she's got all of these kind of beads and face paint, and maybe that's symbolic of her power or authority, right? Daniel said 13 looks like a gangster. He does have kind of a tough expression on his face, right? He looks like he's not, don't mess with me kind of thing, right? That's definitely true. And Vicky said the same thing. He looks cool. People might be scared of him, right? So he might be able to be the boss.
He has a tough look.
He does have a tough look. George?
It could be number 8 too. He might look socially awkward, but maybe he just plays game a lot in like his house, and he just
He's a hacker.
and he just plays like League of Legends, and he's like
Online clan.
he needs his team to play the game.
Oh, okay.
Online clan leader.
Right. So maybe he's a leader of something that doesn't really. Maybe his physical appearance has nothing to do with his ability to lead in some situations, right?
Looks like the kid you would choose to put in be in charge of like a group project so that he can carry the team.
Okay, he looks like the kid you might pick to be in your group at school because he'll carry you and do all the work. Okay.
Could be that quiet kid.
Maybe. I'm not condoning it. I'm just saying that it's a thing. Okay, and last one here. Who's most likely to travel freely anywhere in the world?
5, 14.
Really? Number 3.
Okay, it's okay. I'm hearing 5, 14, and 3. Let's start with 14. Why 14?
Business trips.
Okay, why would he go on business trips?
Because he looks like a guy with a lot of business involved in something like that, so he might go around the world to expand his business.
All right, so we're imagining this guy. It's interesting. We're kind of imagining this guy as someone with money, right? Coming from maybe an Arab country. Maybe he's a businessman. We can very easily imagine him as getting on his private jet and flying around maybe the Middle East or all around the world, making business deals with people. It's pretty easy to imagine him that way, right? I don't know if that's true, but we seem to be thinking about him that way. Who else?
5.
2, 1. Daniel also says 14. Sam says 3. Why 3? I wonder.
She's like a kid, maybe, and she looks kind of wealthy. Maybe like the parents like to take her around the world and make her learn a bit.
Sure, right? So this little girl here, she is cute as a button, but she's very cute, but she's also very stylishly dressed, right? And she looks like she's at a photo shoot as well. So maybe her parents are wealthy, right? And wealthy parents can afford to travel with their kids and take them to all kinds of places and teach them things and show them things. So maybe she travels with her parents. Amy says 3 as well. Kenan says 14. 3, 14. Who else did we? 5?
Yeah.
Why 5?
He looks like goes anywhere with bikes and stuff like that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. He looks like maybe an adventurous, wealthy movie star kind of guy, right? Um, who else?
Seven.
7? Why?
Because in her background, she changes to something like look like in Vegas.
Okay.
Travel there a lot.
She's definitely outside, right? She's outside at night. There's lots of bright lights behind her. Maybe she's traveling right now, right? Maybe she's in the process of that.
4.
4? Why 4?
I don't know. She just looks like she's a model, and I think models go, all around to take, photo shots and
Absolutely, right? Models travel all over the world doing fashion shows and photo shoots in exotic locations, right? That's their job. So she probably travels a lot as well. George?
By traveling, you mean in the country or like?
I think I'm talking outside of her country. Okay, interesting. All right, let's take a little break. We'll come back and then I will talk about the purpose of doing this thing, okay? So take 10, I'll see you in 10 minutes and we'll debrief on this little experiment. All right, and we're back. So I showed you a bunch of pictures. I showed you 14 images, if you don't count the little guy in the circle. And I asked you a bunch of questions about them. And of course, you couldn't possibly have known anything about these people because we don't really know who they are. Did anyone recognize any of those people? No? What's that?
Do you know anyone of them?
No. Although I think, hang on,
The guy looks like Liam Hemsworth.
which guy?
Number 13.
Third, yeah, and I think he's a personality. Like,
He's like a YouTuber.
nah, I don't know. He's somebody. Like in one class, somebody pointed out, oh yeah, I know who he is. He's someone. So I don't.
Zoom into it?
What's that?
Can you like zoom into it?
I don't know. Maybe.
He looks like Harry Potter.
No, I can't zoom in.
He looks like Liam Hemsworth.
He's not Liam. He's not a Hemsworth. He's-
More handsome.
He's not a Hemsworth. But I think somebody has pointed. Or no, it's 14.
Yeah,
I-
14.
Yeah.
Is he a singer?
I don't know, but I've seen him.
You've seen him before. Somebody's pointed out. I think he's a celebrity of some type somewhere. Either way, for the most part, we don't really know who any of these people are. And so, whoops, I'm going to get rid of that. We don't really know who any of these people are. And in all honesty, they're just random people that have come from the internet. And so once upon a time, I did this exercise with my class, and I actually had the students find pictures of people. So these are all pictures that students found, not me. So they're just kind of random people. But when I asked you those questions, you were able to say some things. And of course, I know you don't know for sure, but you were able to make some guesses about who's the most wealthy or who's most likely to be in charge or who's the most religious or any of those things. And part of why that is, getting a lot of messages here, part of why that is because we have been socialized, right? We've internalized certain messages about the way the world is, about the way certain countries are, what certain countries might be like, what culture is like, what religion is like, what people of different ages might be like. And so, and not only that, but on how people dress and present themselves to the world as well. And so we were able to make all kinds of judgments about those people based on our socialization. And I'm not trying to say, you know, gotcha, you judged these people. I'm not trying to do that in any way. But I'm saying that we have internalized a lot of messages about what the world is like and what people are like. And that's what allows us to kind of make these judgments and make these determinations. And a lot of the things that we've kind of learned without really knowing, right? People haven't really taught us directly. We just kind of absorb these things. And so, you know, we can look at people like number 6 and say, yeah, I kind of know what this guy might be like, right? He's old, he's white, if that means anything specifically to you. He's got his mouth open. I don't know if he's like yelling or complaining or barking orders to people. I'm not sure what he's doing, but based on who he is, based on the social groups he belongs to, based on how he's dressed, based on his facial expression, we can make some judgments about him. We can build a picture of him. Doesn't mean that we're right, but we can do this. And so had you not had any socialization at all, or had you not absorbed these social messages, you wouldn't be able to do any of these things. I would have asked you who's the wealthiest, and you would have looked at these people and said, I have no idea. I can't tell how much money any of these people have. But again, because you have absorbed certain ideas about what people are like, you can do this, right? You can look at these people and say, yeah, I think number 14 has the most money. And you're probably not wrong, right? Especially since I think he's some sort of celebrity in his home country. So he probably does have some cash. It's probably a good, it's probably an accurate judgment that you've made. And so, again, it's a fun little exercise, but it does show you that we have absorbed messages about who people are and what certain people are like and what the world is like, and we can make judgments about people very, very easily. And that's because it's part of our socialization. It's part of our experience in society is figuring out who people are and what they're like. We'll come back to that later. Okay, so I do want you to read just a little more from the textbook. It's just a couple of pages. And so the textbook is still in the same place. It's still in Microsoft Teams. I think my page numbers refer to the pages of the PDF, not the pages of the textbook itself. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to let you read these and answer these questions, okay? And so can I give you 12 minutes to do that? Is that enough? Okay. I'm going to put up a little timer here for 12 minutes and we'll see how that goes. But yeah, find the textbook in Microsoft Teams under Files and read it and answer these questions, and then we'll talk about them, okay? Okay, so let's talk just a little bit about a few of these. We probably won't have time to do the whole thing, but we'll talk a little bit. So this section here is talking not only about socialization, we know what socialization is, but the places in which socialization comes from. And so you'll see the section of the text here talks about us being socialized by our families, being socialized by our peer groups, but also being socialized by what they call social institutions. Okay, and so social institutions are kind of little kind of, they can be organizations, they can be practices, they can be sets of groups of people or structures in society that serve to teach people about how to behave in society and sort of reproduce society as it already is. And so the family is one of those things, right? Families are social institutions. The media, they mention, is a social institution. The government, the education system, which we're all sitting in right now, religion, all of those are social institutions. They teach people about social expectations and they reinforce those expectations. And in the process, they kind of reproduce society as it is. And so the first question I ask you here is what's peer group socialization?
So peer group is made up of people who are of similar age and social status and who share the same interests.
A group of people who have similar age and social status and interests? Okay. Anna, did you want to add to that, or?
Learning the norms and identity from people other than our parents.
Right. So the text is trying to explain to us that our first kind of the first people who socialize us are our parents and our immediate families, our aunts and uncles and cousins and grandparents. But then later on, we are socialized by our peer group. So we go to school, we make a set of friends that are usually our own age, give or take. And throughout our kind of schooling lives, hopefully, we have a collection of people around us that are roughly the same age, and they help socialize us as well, right? We learn how to kind of be other people in the context of our friends, right? Daniel mentions here, I'll just answer this quickly, social institutions are like tools. In a way, they are. They're tools for society. And so if you have a society, if you have a big group of people that have to work together and cooperate together and achieve goals together, then people need to be sort of taught the expectations, right? They need to be taught how to do certain things. And so different social institutions are maybe not tools, but they're almost like parts of the machine that serve to train people and teach them and give them expectations and reinforce those expectations. And they all social institutions work together in order to allow society to function. Okay, and so does that make sense? Some sort of sense? A little bit of sense? Okay. Yeah, tools is okay, Daniel, but I would probably say they're tools for society as a whole. Yeah, so we're socialized by our peer group, we're socialized by our family, but we're also socialized by media, probably to an ever-increasing extent. Also the education system, religion, if we're religious people, then religion helps to socialize us. But what do you think? Do you think peer group socialization is more powerful than the socialization you receive from your family, or not?
Yes.
Yes, it is? Why do you say so?
So like usually like people have 8 hours of work, 8 hours at home and 8 hours of sleep. You spend 8 hours at your work, and then when you come home, you have 8 hours, but you don't spend it with your family as much yet. You spend maybe like 2 or 3 hours, so you spend most of the time with like your work.
When you say you don't, do you mean you don't, or do you mean I don't, or a person doesn't?
A person, like usually.
Okay. So you're saying that if you divide a person's day up into 8 hours of sleeping, 8 hours of work, and 8 hours at home, then they are getting kind of equal socialization from their peer group and their family?
Yeah, but like 8 hours at your work, but at home you don't spend 8 hours with your family.
Right. Oh, okay.
You
So
get
you might not spend a full 8 hours with your family at home, so the peer group might be more powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. What else do you think? And I'm also thinking about like people, I'm also thinking about kids. So kids from, maybe when they first enter school at 3, 4, 5 years of age, all the way to maybe your age now. That's kind of what I'm thinking. But Avera?
I feel like peer group socialization is more powerful because with your peer groups, people come from different backgrounds, so it's more true to the real world. Whereas with family socialization, it's more true to how your parents were raised.
Right. So there's kind of a broader context, I guess, with friends, right? Whereas when you're socialized by your parents, that's just a tiny little world, right? And that little world, that little bubble with your parents might be reflective of society as a whole, but it also might not be, right? And so your peer group is made up of different people with different experiences, and so maybe that's a little more representative of how the world is in general than just the little bubble of your parents, right? Particularly if your parents are kind of weird. It might be different from society. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. What else do you think?
I think peer grouping is more powerful
Peer group? Why you say that?
because I feel more comfortable with my friends than my family.
Okay.
I'm not saying I don't feel comfortable with my family. I'm saying it's like more comfortable for me to say things to my friends than to my. That's just me.
Yeah, and that's true too, right? Is that the peer group can be more powerful for a number of reasons, right? When you're talking to your friends, you feel that maybe they're having a very similar experience to you, right? Whereas your parents, you might feel like, oh, they don't get it, right? They don't know what it's like to be me. They don't know what it's like to be in my situation. They don't know what it's like to be the age that I'm at in the world that we're currently living. And so, sometimes there's a bit of a generation gap, right? There's a disconnect between how you feel and having your parents or your adult people, having them understand that maybe, right? What else do you think?
I think like they're kind of the same because if we don't socialize properly with our friends, or maybe we just take the behavior that they're not proper in society, then we always get back to our parents, right? We always learn the best from them, or we have learned the initials and the basics from them. So we
Right.
always get back to them if we get stuck in something or with something in society.
Yeah, remember when we were talking the other day about feral children and sort of language acquisition, and if you aren't sort of taught language at that early age, it affects the way your brain is wired. And so this is the last thing I'll say today because we're almost out of time, but I invite you to think about the fact that the way that your parents socialized you when you were young has had a direct effect on the way your brain is actually wired. And had they done things differently, your brain might have wired differently and you might be a slightly different person than you are now. I don't have any scientific data to really back that up, but it's interesting to think about that, the people who socialized you first had a lot of influence over the way that you were socialized, right? And so, yeah, you may go out into the world, you may meet different people, you may be influenced by them one way or another, or socialized one way or another, but still a lot of your initial values and beliefs and ways of looking at the world comes from those early years, right? And so, you may experience different things, but also your foundation is created by those early years that you're socialized in, right? I don't know. Interesting to think about. Okay, so we only have a few minutes left. So before I say goodbye to people in here, I'm going to say goodbye to online people. Good work today, and I'll see you tomorrow, and we'll finish picking up these questions. Okay, so bye-bye, online people. Nice to have you here.